constantly facing the challenges from government policies, regulatory methods, the economic structures, continuous demand by the customers. It is also observed that even the current competition is influencing and challenging any decisions taken in the organizations. Well, not to forget the potential competitors. We don't know who can be a potential competitor. That's the reason we need to be on the front foot all the time. There are cultural changes and challenges in the organization if we are the global organization or a multinational organizations. Face these kind of challenges, and it might be organized restructuring, regulatory modifications, technological, political, legal, demographic, cultural challenges. Therefore, a lot of organizations must and continuously adapt to the environment if they are to survive and prosper. What has happened is, it is very easy to maintain your old products and services, but if you want to move to the other side of a paradigm and you want to evolve yourself to overcome these challenges, there is a need of the external intervention. Having your current processes in place will not help you to evolve. You need to take an external intervention. So now that can, one of the tools which can help you to overcome or evolve yourself or your current organization processes to overcome these challenges might be the best project management practices. Now, what is happening over the years is that the mantra to be ahead of the race in the competitive advantage strategy its ability to execute the project is what drives the realization of intended benefits. Most of the organization has changed their perspective from looking at the business operations, and they are moving towards how do we manage and execute the projects which have been taken up. Even to implement a strategy in an organization itself is a project. So how do I manage these projects in a most effective manner is the key today. Now, when we move and we want to understand that success criteria for the project, when do we call any project to be successful? Most of the times we say that my project was successful, but are we on the right definition for a project to be called as a project successful? Okay, let's understand. We always believe that if I have delivered what the customer has asked for, that is nothing but scope. We agree that my project was successful. The next question to be asked is that, though we were able to deliver what the customer has asked for, did we deliver within the time frame agreed with the customer? If yes, then how about the budget? Did we meet the deadlines within the time and within the agreed budget, or the budget which was approved by the management to meet the right scope? If we have met all these three things the first time right, and how about the quality of the product or a service? Which did we analyze and prove ourselves that we met the intended quality? These were the best practices which have been shared by the project management experts, CSSQ. We call it as cost, schedule, scope, and quality. There is a new entry over here. The paradigm has shifted, and a lot of people are understanding, though you are meeting your CSSQ, how about the intended business benefit for which the organization has initiated this project? So this is a new entry in the market which defines success criteria of your projects. Now, looking at it, has any of your projects met all these 5 criteria? If yes, then your project can be tagged under the successful project criteria. Okay, let's move on and understand. Well, I know you might be thinking that most of our projects don't meet all these things at the first time. I totally agree with you. So looking at it, what we did is PricewaterhouseCoopers did a survey in 2012. They have interviewed project management professionals across the globe. Thankfully, I was one of them, was interviewed. We were asked a couple of questions to think about. Now, to be looked into in detail, It is a shocking but yet revealing thing. Only 22% of the projects across the globe are successful first time. That means if an organization has initiated 100 projects in a year, out of which only 22 projects are successful, that means they have met all those 5 success criteria in the first time or as planned. 38% saw the daylight, but they were challenged. They were challenged at one or the other criteria. Either the scope was challenged, the schedule was challenged, cost overruns happened, or they didn't meet the intended business benefits. And 40% of the projects are put back into the shelf under the tag of on hold or temporarily closed. We were also asked, why do you think these projects fail? For which the most common reason which came up was poor estimation. 30% of the project managers who were interviewed voted for poor estimation to be a top contributor for your failures, followed by poor communication and risk management. When we say project overruns, that means where did we shoot ourselves? Most of the projects have either shot over the budget or the schedule. It is shocking to see that most of the projects don't meet the intended business benefits. That is very revealing to know. Okay. To move on, well, these are all numbers and statistics. Let's look at common yet ignored pitfalls, which is the theme of this today's webinar. Pitfall number 1. Say yes first and think how to do it. We end up taking too much on the plate by saying yes, and then we say, how do we do it? That clearly shows that we are failing to scope the project properly. Have we identified what our current capabilities are? Are we in the right position, or are we having the right strength to meet what customer is asking for? How do we avoid these pitfalls? The first thing to look into is assess our current capabilities to deliver what the requirement is. And we have to agree to the scope baseline and ensure the customers also agree to it. Pitfall number 2. Most of the customers don't know what exactly they want, and that's the reason they're coming to you. So it becomes our prerogative to ensure that our understanding and customer understanding is same for the deliverable. Hence, it is very important for us to define a comprehensive and acceptable criteria for the deliverable. How do we do that? We can go ahead and prepare the prototypes and get it validated. Many times it has been observed in my projects as well. Our understanding of the deliverable and the customer's understanding of the deliverable is not accurate. And it is very important for the project manager to get it validated before we could even build it. Pitfall number 3. Well, we all know that it is very happy moment when we get something extra when we are asked. So is with the customer as well. But that extra comes with a cost, right? Many times we fail to handle scope creeps. Customers are always demanding. We can't say no to the customer. However, what we can do is we can implement a robust change management control. Failing to identify scope creeps is another pitfall, which has been regularly observed in a lot of projects. These scope creeps not only shoot your schedule, they will in turn make sure that your budget is overrun. There is a lot of ambiguity in the project progress, and it will also contribute to a lot of disparity in the deliverable as well. So hence, it is again a very important thing to look into is that how do we implement a robust change control mechanism? It is not just implementing a robust change control mechanism, it is also important that we need to identify, assess the impact, and communicate the same to all the stakeholders. Post the approval of the impact of the change, we need to proceed with implementation. Pitfall number 4, we have always seen that few people are idle and others are slogging. It always happens. As a project manager, we need to ensure that we are allocating right responsibilities to right people to perform the right duties. How do we do that? To avoid such pitfall, that it becomes a prerogative for a project manager to identify the resource requirements and prepare responsibility assignment matrix, which is also called as a RACI matrix. It gives you a clear description of who, what, where, and how will perform their allocated tasks. Moving to the pitfall number 5. Though the captain knows how to maneuver the ship, he still seeks the sailor's advice. Right. The project manager might be the best, but if he doesn't involve his team members during the planning phase, we need to understand that at the end of the day, it's the entire project team who makes a project successful. So why don't we start them involving from the planning itself? So how do we avoid these common pitfalls? Analyze your team members' skills and competencies, involve your team members, and make sure you are utilizing all their skills to the best for better planning. Pitfall number 6. Well, who influences my project and when? I have no idea what does it mean. That means that I don't know who are my stakeholders in the project. A classic example, which I always quote in all my sessions, is how the Tata Motors failed to identify the local authorities of Singur or Kolkata to be one of the key stakeholders. The entire plant was up and running or about to be commissioned, and they hit the roadblock. So it becomes very important for us to identify who are our stakeholders, who will be influencing our projects, at what instance will the stakeholder become a major influencer. Pitfall number 6, failing to identify and manage stakeholders across the project life cycle. It is not only identifying the stakeholders, it is also understanding how do we prepare a stakeholder management strategy to convert the negative influencers to supporters becomes key aspect to be looked into the project management. Pitfall number 7. Well, we all live with risks, right? But how good the calculation of risk has gone through? That's the question to be asked in the project as well. Though we have identified the risks, or even we have not even identified the risks, agreed. How about the risks which have been identified? Have we evaluated those risks? And have we prepared the responses for those risks? It's a very pivotal role. Failing to identify, quantify, and mitigate risks is another common pitfall. This is the most common yet highly ignored pitfall in the project management. I would vote for this one. So, how do we do that? Identify strategic level, functional level, and operational level risks. Quantify and prioritize risks. Prepare the risk response plans. Well, just an example to be quoted over here. Well, we plan for resources. Yes, we have planned for resources so well, but what if an employee resigns on the third week of your project kickoff? Did you identify that as a risk? Because across the industry, on an average, the time taken to replace a person on board with an equal skill set and the person who would be able to perform at a particular level of competency would require 75 to 90 days. However, our HR policy says that 1 month is the notice period for a person to resign. So what do we do for the rest 45 days? So that's a risk. Have we identified this risk? Have we evaluated this risk? And do we have a response plan at risk? That's a question to be asked. Pitfall number 8. As George Bernard Shaw said, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. I am under the impression that someone else is sending the report for me. So is with the other person as well. He is also still under the illusion that some other person is going to send the report. As you have seen, the survey from the PricewaterhouseCoopers have told that the second biggest contributor for any project failure is lack of communication. Either we have improper communication or we have incomplete communication. Project Management Institute, PMI, says that 90% of the time a project manager should spend on communication. That is a mandate which has been given by the PMI. How do we overcome this pitfall? To have a strong communication matrix prepared during the planning phase itself. This communication matrix should address what will be communicated, when will be communicated, how, where, to whom, and these responsibilities need to be assigned. This is a communication plan to the stakeholders. There is the other part of it. Are we communicating clearly and in a more transparent manner to all our project team members? Keeping the team members communicated about the progress or any failures or any pitfalls of the project plays a very key role. Pitfall number 9. When I was consulting, I've always observed that most of the projects fail at the same time. And when we did a root cause analysis to identify why everybody is repeating the same mistake, why does your project fail at the same time? The pitfall, what we observed was that people do not document the lessons learned. Also, there is no collaboration within the team and between the teams. What are the best practices to be shared to avoid this pitfall? It is also observed that we as a human race are running away from documenting things. We believe documenting is an overburden. However, what the rest of the project managers across the globe have voted for is that the lessons learned which have been documented and kept as the reference in organization process assets were of great reference for them not to repeat the same mistakes. Mistakes happen. We cannot stop them. However, it is in our control not to repeat the same mistake. So it becomes an imperative for every organization to document its lessons learned and also have best practice sharing sessions among the team members and between the team members. The last but not the least, pitfall number 10. Well, I was talking all about the planning. my question is, everything was planned well, but still we failed. Why? We planned communication, we planned risks, we identified stakeholders, we planned the schedule at the best, we budgeted our costs so very well, the scope was frozen, and also the communication plan was prepared, but we still failed. Whatever you plan is executed. That is our assumption. Until and unless we do not implement a robust monitoring and control mechanism. If projects are not monitored and appropriate actions are not taken during the variations, it might be a good recipe for the failure of the project. How do we overcome? Having a strong control plan with actions on what to monitor, when to monitor, who will monitor, what will be monitored against, any specific checklists, and most importantly, what actions to be taken against what variation constitutes my control plan. These were the 10 pitfalls what I could consolidate and share with you guys. Moving on, how do we avoid these pitfalls have been mentioned. Now, a quick wrap up on tips to avoid pitfalls. Have planning workshop with the team. It is my own experience. What I do is I have a workshop with all the stakeholders, the entire team, my project team, customer, sponsors during the planning workshop. We give them the reference documents and we ask them, how do you plan this project? What will be your role? So this has resulted in a fruitful and success rate of projects for me. So this is one of the best practices what I would like to share. Clearly and comprehensively define the scope. It's very important for us to define the scope very well. Have a clear acceptance criteria with the customer. Assign the proper roles and responsibilities. Involve team members and manage them collaboratively with motivation, incentives, etc. It is very important to identify and analyze your stakeholders. Also assess their influence on your project and understand how their intuition is towards your projects. Are they opposing it or are they supporting your project? Quantify your risks with proper response plans. Have a very clear and transparent communication with your stakeholders. Tell them what the project is going through. It helps them and you both to collaborate and make this project successful. One thing we fail to understand that every stakeholder in the project is equally concerned for the success of the project. We need to address that. Document all the lessons learned and best practices to be kept in your document repository. Have a centralized repository of all your lessons learned, process documents, so that it becomes a part of the DNA in the organization to make sure that every lesson learned is documented and referred in the future projects so that they don't repeat the same mistakes. Having a robust monitoring and control plan is very imperative and important to make sure the project milestones or the tasks are not skewed a lot. This is a wrap up on the tips to avoid common pitfalls. Now, is it practically possible for us to implement everything in an organization? Well, the questions might be a two-sided yes and no, depends on the size and the scope of the organization. But most of the organizations, what they have done, they have embarked on implementing something called as PMO company services. That means project management office. What is the PMO does? Having such PMO in place have helped most of the companies to ensure that the projects are selected properly. The benefit realization happens is to the utmost. The methodology of driving a project, it might be agile, it might be traditional project management, it might be any other project management methodology for that matter. It is uniform across the organization. As a project team member, I need to know how the project management happens, for which I need to undergo specific training programs as well. The PMO also caters to the training program. The best part of the project management office is that it also gives you the tools, the techniques to use, so that you do not have to invent the tools and techniques on your own. As a central authority, project management governs your projects, make sure that every project goes through a robust monitoring and control mechanism. This helps projects to increase their efficiency in success rates. Now, realizing this need, many companies have embarked on the journey of institutionalizing best project management processes in their organization. Having such PMOs in place have helped these companies to meet 80% of the projects to be successful. Which are these companies? We have IBM, we have HP, we have Microsoft, Infosys has a Project Management Center of Excellence. Ironically, it's been observed that only 8% of the companies across the globe have PMOs in place. That means rest 92% of the companies are still following the ad hoc project management. They are following the project management, we're not saying they are. However, it's more of an ad hoc. Now, what's happening is that those 8% of the organizations have a success rate of 18%, wherein it's only 22% of the success rate is with the 60% or fewer of the projects achieved of all three measures. That's low performance and high performers. Now, why do we need to have a PMO in place? What does it cater to us? Is it really required for the organizations to institutionalize project management practices? PMO provides an integrated master plan. That means the group of project managers come under one roof in an organization and they prepare a master plan to be followed across the organization without any ambiguity. Standardized project management processes. PMO also establishes metrics for which every project will be measured against. They might be your key performance areas or even your performance metrics like schedule variance, cost variances. There is a repository of risks, issues, and dependencies kept with the PMO. They do not have only the list of the risks, they also have the solutions for them. So should you come across a particular issue or a dependency or a risk, you can very well approach the PMO and have them in place. There is an active participation and input from the business units because PMO is centrally driven. So they are into a collaborative mode with different business units. Clear set of goals, expectations, requirement. Having such experience sitting at the top in the PMO gives us the clarity in the expectations and the requirements. Many PMOs have consolidated the information and made it a form of artifacts, what actions to be taken in the form of organization process assets. It is a one single platform to provide full transparency into all aspects of the project. Whenever it's a complex project, many times we sit in the silos and work with the corner of a project, wherein if we are working with a PMO at the governance level, it gives us the transparency into all other aspects as well. Better control over the project, since the governance factor lies with the PMO, it becomes their authority and responsibility to govern the projects and make sure all the metrics which has been defined and agreed upon are under the control. Being better equipped to make the optimal decisions related to the projects is very important again. Now, how does it impact the organizations? Well, let's look at it. Having these common pitfalls and having these issues, how this has impacted the organizations. It has been observed, in fact, the PMI, Project Management Institute, has rolled out their PMI Pulse 2013, that is the yearly magazine. It was revealing and yet shocking for us to know that every $1 billion spent on a failed project has an unrecoverable cost. That means the loss forever is 135 million. So that means 13.5% of the budgeted cost, and if your project fails, that means doesn't mean it's completely unrecoverable. That's a huge money at stake there. Well, as I told you, there are two types of performance: high performance and low performance. Now, looking at low performance, what is at stake? What is at risk here? Project Management Institute has also done a survey, and they have found that we are talking about the 8% high performers here. These are the 8% high performers. They have $20 million. This is out of $1 billion. Every $1 billion allocated for a particular project, $20 million is at risk. However, that's 2%. However, with a low performance, that is the other 92% of the organizations, there are $280 million at risk there. So that's a huge money at stake. So the probability of the success rate of the project clearly showcases what my money is at stake. It is also disheartening to see the trend in the failure rates in the project. This was a data which was captured from 2009 to 2012 Q4, and we could see an increasing trend in the project failures. That in Q4 2011, it was 32% of the projects failed. However, today we stand more than 45% of the projects which have failed. So that is an alarming situation for us. We have to look into what best we can do to overcome such situations. This was a brief introduction on pitfalls in project management and the impact of these pitfalls in project management. Few key takeaways. If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. That means we need to plan our project properly and make sure we plan the project with the team. Before I could even move on and when I've finished the takeaways, if you don't attack the risks will attack you. Make sure you're managing your risks properly. What is not on paper has not been said. Be clear on the scope. We might take time to ensure that the scope is clear. Most of the times, customers do not agree to document everything, but it's our prerogative to make sure that everything is documented in black and white. Change is inevitable. However, change management is mandatory. You cannot skip from implementing change management system in place. Yes, the most valuable and least used word in a project manager's vocabulary is no. We need to learn to say no. Having realistic goals is a very important aspect of project management. As the statement says, it takes one woman 9 months to have a baby. If your sponsor, a customer, is asking to impregnate 9 women and deliver a baby in 1 month, we should put a foot down and say it's not possible if the goal is not realistic. The first 90% of the project takes 90% of the time. The last 10% takes additional 90%. Why? We get into an iterative mode of project management. We fail to monitor and control the variations in the project. Well, the user doesn't know what he wants until he gets it. Then he knows what he does not want. Agreed. So having a clear acceptance criteria will make sure that there is no ambiguity in the definition of the deliverable. If it can go wrong, it will. You cannot control an event to happen. Risk is an uncertain event. It might turn into a challenge or an opportunity. However, we need to be prepared to make sure that we have the response plans in place. What I would like to do right now is that since I've explained the pitfalls in project management, my coordinator will open up a poll for you guys. On your screen, you will be seeing the poll. What I want to do is that, to what extent have these pitfalls influenced your project management? What are the common pitfalls, what you guys have faced or observed or experienced in your projects? And you have an option to vote for these pitfalls. And we would like to see which is the most common yet highly ignored pitfall in your respective projects, in your respective programs or day-to-day project management activities. Well, post this, we'll open up a discussion with our expert panelists and industry leaders so that they can share their own experience on the pitfalls in project management and how they have handled these situations. Thank you. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, I request you to write down the chat box and we'll consolidate all the questions and try to answer all of them. We'll also open up the question and answer session post the panelist discussion. Thank you. Please do participate in the poll. We have got 90% of the response for the first set of questions. We'll be moving for the next. Well, let me just share the results with you guys for what are the most common pitfalls what you guys have faced. A lot of people have told that we fail to manage the scope creep. That is so true with the rest of the industry business project management professionals, and we totally share the same thought. No proper allocation of responsibilities, then second one, and the scope not being clear goes to the top list, and we totally agree with you that there is a highest level of contributor for the imprecise scope. So let's move to the next set of questions. So we have next 6 options for what are the most common pitfalls you have observed or experienced in your project. Improper stakeholder management, failing to identify and manage risks, lack of communication, no documentation of lessons learned, failing to monitor and control variations in the project. Let's see which one is the top contributor for the project failure according to you guys. Well, we'll have it closed in 2 minutes. Request you guys to quickly move your mouse. Okay, so we have the results here as well for the second poll, and it is very interesting to see that most of the people have voted for failing to identify and manage risks, followed by lack of communication. So we share the same thought as the other project managers across the globe who have been interviewed for the PricewaterhouseCoopers survey. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. Now I would like to invite our expert panelists. Let me introduce my panelist, Mr. Yogesh Nerurkar, who is heading business operations for Hewlett Packard India West region. Mr. Girish Raghuraman, who is the senior project control for CBI Dubai, and Dr. Chandrasekhar Nimkar, who is heading the global supply chain. He has played a very key role in managing projects across the globe in mergers and acquisition of multinational organizations, and who currently is the director for global supply chain with Alvogen Corporation. I'll be asking the question to the key panelists, and I would be requesting them to share their experience based on the nomination of the questions which has been asked through. Okay. Okay. Well, I'll open up the poll. Are we on? Yeah. Okay. Well, Dr. Nimkar, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay.
Hello?
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can hear you too. Dr.
Yeah.
Lisa, can you share your experiences with different stakeholders and how these stakeholders has influenced your projects, and any lessons to share, because you might be working with many stakeholders across the globe, so that would be a good lesson for us to hear from your end.
Yeah, thank you, Srini. And in your presentation, most of the points you have already captured. But I just want to tell you one real life experience is my company has acquired two companies. One is in Europe and another is in South Korea. And currently we are implementing one project in my Korean acquisited company. And in the beginning, as you mentioned, that all the stakeholders were not fully considered while measuring the scope of the project, and because of this, today we are really facing a lot of difficulties in that particular project. So capturing the all stakeholders and their expectations is really important, and this communication also played a role in this, because there was a language barrier and many of them were not really fully conversant with the English language, and some of the points were missed during the design of the experiment. So this is my experience, and always everybody feels that for any project, if my project cost is very less, then it will get approved by the management. So in the beginning they try to play safe and write the figures which are on a very conservative side, but in reality it doesn't happen that way, and budget also gets exceeded. So these are the 2 points I just want to emphasize with the group. And if anybody is having any specific question, okay, I will be pleased to answer.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor. Well, Yogesh, yes, what is your thought on what is your thought on handling the stakeholders? You also have experienced the global stakeholder management in your operations. You might be working with people in US, UK, Canada, and of course in India as well. So how do stakeholders have influence in your project? To what extent, what was your strategy to manage these stakeholders?
Yeah, Shrini, honestly, I mean, it has been a varied experience for me to be working with global clients. Obviously, since I'm part of HP, I get to interact with clients across the world. But what I've seen primarily is that there are a lot of scope changes which happen, which have been the primary impact because of these stakeholders. Obviously, what I've observed in a couple of processes, projects, what I've seen is we don't have a proper change management process which is established. Now, which results in a lot of scope creep or scope changes which happen, which do not really, undergo a proper change management process, resulting in either you not meeting the scope itself, or the customer not agreeing to a successful deliverable. That is what one of the thing has been when I deal with stakeholders. The other thing I have noticed also is the expectations setting in with the stakeholders. Now, obviously, I'm only talking about the external stakeholders, which are the clients whom I manage. So a lot of times we fall weak in setting the expectations with the client in terms of, for example, if a product has to be delivered, the features of the product, for example, the expectation should be set very clearly, agreed with the customer that this is what the product is, this is the tool that we're going to implement for you, these are its features. Unfortunately, that seems to come at a pretty late time when we get into a discussion again that this is what the client really expecting was, and why isn't this particular feature a part of that tool. So expectation setting is another primary thing for the stakeholders, which needs to be done. Otherwise, yes, they have a lot of influence over the entire project which is driven, because your success is at the end of the day only going to be basically cleared out by saying that the client is saying that your project is successful.
Absolutely,
So
Girish.
that's
Thank
what
you very
my
much.
would be on the stakeholders.
Yep, thank you very much. Girish, thank you very much for joining this call. Girish, what is your view has been handling stakeholders in a different country altogether? You're based out of Dubai, so we're talking from India. So how your experience has been handling these stakeholders from the different culture altogether? Because your clients might be different, and I'm sure you might be working with many organizations across the globe. Well, Girish has extensive experience in handling oil and gas projects. Unlike our IT projects, this is more to do with what exactly happens at the shop floor level. So, Girish, what is your experience been?
Hi there. Thanks for this opportunity to address these topics, which I think are common across the globe. Well, yes, I think this is also industry specific, and also I would say regionally it changes, as in from region to region. So in terms of stakeholders, my experience is that once stakeholders can set the standards for the project, and hence the proper stakeholder management, as you've already addressed, is extremely important. You have good stakeholders and you have not so good stakeholders. So when you have good stakeholders, you need to understand that actively involving such people in the entire process of your project, I'm talking from a contractor angle, is extremely it's going to be beneficial for the project. It's always good to take the early pains of handling the expectations rather than kind of hiding away and try to put things below the table. You open up to the client, you kind of manage him and take him along with the project, and they can make a huge difference to the way the project is executed. And they can really drive certain projects where I have personally experienced where the clients, I'm talking typically where a client has intervened to completely change the direction of the project. So I don't want to be biased. I'm from India, obviously, but my experience handling Indian clients is, and even rather in our part of the world, we kind of don't want to be transparent, which in my experience oversees a great culture which we all need to learn, and perhaps we are progressing very positively in that direction, is that we need to be transparent in our communication with a top-down transparent approach, in your project management team. And this is going to get you great benefits. So this would be my take, and as kind of a lessons learned, as I said, an active involvement of stakeholders, having detailed reviews, especially in the initiation phase and the planning phase, and a transparent working style, a communication, and setting your standards. As I said, one point which I must specify, which is quite specific to the oil and gas industry, is safety. I can understand IT projects don't run into safety concerns, most of the time. While oil and gas, we execute projects many times in severe conditions. So when you are executing projects, safety is a huge, and I would say is considered the topmost, after which quality comes in. So the stakeholder can set these priorities right.
Okay. Well, that triggers my second question to the panelists. Well, Girish, you are surrounded by risks, right? Aren't you? Well,
yes, absolutely.
Risk of safety,
huge risks.
Risk of safety, risk of quality, risk of meeting the expectations, and I'm sure you might be working with multiple vendors or contractors or the human resource. So how does this, or rather to what extent, risk management has impacted both positively and negatively in your project? Can you just throw some light on that quickly? How the risk management has played a role?
Yes, risk management, if implemented correctly and timely, and especially in the beginning and the initiation phase of the project, can be a great tool, to minimize project losses, overruns, delays, etc. In many organizations, this is often done as kind of a tick in the box exercise that, oh yes, we did risk management. Well, I think many of the times this is, as I said, a paper, a dummy exercise. We fail to implement it. And that I think is very important. You need to take risk management very seriously. You just don't do the Monte Carlo analysis or whatever, see the results and then put it in your documents and close the file. You need to work on it. And it has to be continuous. You need to have risk management workshops, intermittently. Of course, you can't keep doing it. You do it once, but you again review it through the life cycle of the project. And this can be really helpful to you. And in my personal experience, we often look at risks. While in the risk management exercise, you also need to look at your opportunities. And often these opportunities can really yield you great results. Like, okay, let me take a very simple, basic example. Like in the oil and gas industry, again, this is quite specific, as you said. We often work in risky areas. We work in risk-prone areas, like that, but that's where oil and gas is. Like Iraq, today Iraq is a risky area, but that's where all the projects are. And Africa, we work in Angola, we work in Yemen, we work in Chad, we work in all these areas. So, what is here the key factor as a risk is that you, as a company, are putting people, they run a risk, a safety concern is there. So you need to set your safety standards, have to be top priority. But what is the opportunity here? You don't have many people who are going to be working there. You need a very strong company infrastructure to be working in these areas. And if you do this risk management properly, you are going to get great returns, because often projects executed here are at least yield you 2 to 3 times of what it would yield, in a normal, you can say, in a normal non-risk prone area. So it's just a simple example where effective risk management done correctly, done in time, and done with a genuine intention. That here, in my example, the company has to genuinely know that safety has to be the top priority, then you are going to get great returns. And of course, I'm not saying that's here, I don't want to highlight safety as the key point. Of course, it's understood that all the other practices are obviously followed. Then you are going to do very well and you're going to make a lot of money.
Agreed. Thank you very much, Girish. Thanks for your insight on that. Well, I would just like to ask this same question to Yogesh, who comes from the service industry. Well, we looked into the ONGC, which is the oil and gas organization or an industry. So how does risks have played a very key role in service industry or the support industry where we work in the IT service industry? Yogesh, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Srini. So I think risk management has been a very crucial part of all the projects that we have done, even in the IT industry. The reason why I say that is because it is at the end of the day, the implementation of the solution or the product is the most critical thing for us, and deploying it successfully. If we don't do it at first go, there are huge costs which are at risk. Obviously there are other factors as well. So it's important that we identify the risks initially itself, and I think a big part of that is the communication which you have internally within your team and with the stakeholders, clients, or whoever is a part of the stakeholder group, because no risk is a small risk. At the end of the day, we need to ensure that all risks are being highlighted, covered, so that at the end of the day your project doesn't run into a risk which you are not factored into. Obviously, risks play a major part at the beginning itself of the project. If you are able to identify a risk and mitigate or have a plan for that risk, it just ensures that your project is going to be on track, and I think that's exactly what your stakeholders want.
Well, thank you very much. Doctor, would you like to share any thought on risk management? You might have come across many risk management across your project life cycle or your experiences. Do you have any insights to share?
Yes, Srini. In my industry, basically it's a pharmaceutical industry, so directly the risk is connected to human life. Therefore, for any development project,
I totally agree with you. We wouldn't want to take any of your tablets which have not passed through your testing phase, right?
exactly. So it is unlike any other industry because many other industries their risk is connected to money factor, but in our case the risk is connected to the human life. So therefore, it is much more important. And while designing the experiment, while undertaking the project, the risk of human life or any substandard material going in the market or testing or conducting clinical trials, or nowadays everybody is going for the generic medicines. So what exactly is the generic and what is the innovator medicine? So all these things are to be considered while designing the experiments and going ahead with the project. So as I said earlier, it's very important to define the scope and risk measurement. And so a qualified person having the project management knowledge, or the person who is a champion of any project, we always try to see that he is having a formal education on handling the project and managing the customers, managing the stakeholders, managing the quality of the product, and at the end of the day, finally, the reputation of the organization.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you very much, sir. Apart from all the pitfalls which I have mentioned in the presentation, do you think are there any other common and yet highly ignored pitfalls which most of the people tend to ignore while performing project management or handling or executing any project? Do you have any other lessons what you could share where we could get benefited out? Doctor?
Attitude of the people is the most important thing.
Can you just repeat? I think we missed you on mute.
Hello, can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, the attitude of the people who are involved in the project team is most important. So beginning of the project, I think training or the briefing to the entire project team is most important. That's what I think.
I totally agree with you, sir. Yeah, having an alignment within the team is very important.
Yeah.
Well, Yogesh, what is your idea or what is your thought on any other common pitfalls which I might not have covered the pitfalls which you think might be very important in the service industry?
Srini, actually you covered pretty much most of the pitfalls, but I think there are a couple of things which come to my mind from my personal experience of managing project. I think one is from a internal stakeholders specifically, or your internal team, we tend to ignore the escalation matrix which should be there, because a lot of times it results in the the timelines being missed because you don't know whom to contact in case any one of your team members is from, let's say, another department is not able to function, because we are operating in a global environment. So it's important that you have a proper escalation matrix in front of you to ensure that you are not missing on the timelines against any activity. And secondly, I think in terms of communication with the client or the stakeholders, what I have seen is that there should be a maximum of 1 or 2 only communication lines open with them. If there are multiple people engaged with clients or stakeholders, there seems to be a lot of communication which doesn't get noticed, or a lot of things which are not really captured while discussing, and at the end of the day it severely impacts the project. So I think these two are what I would say based on my experience.
I agree with you. Girish, how about your industry? Any other pitfalls which I might have missed out and might be very relevant and impactful in your industry, or what you might have faced in your career span?
Yes, in fact, as the other panelists have said, most of the points are covered. However, I do have one point which I think we could stress on is a proper interface management. This becomes quite key in your project, especially I'm again talking about my oil and gas projects where especially brownfield projects where you have multiple party involvement. There are several stakeholders. It's not just one oil company. Maybe you have multiple oil companies, multiple contractors. And in such an environment, very strong interface management is very key because how it's not a one-time process. It has to be, again, spread across the project. And if you don't do that properly, you're going to run into huge problems. So that maybe I could say as another pitfall which one needs to take care of.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, the panelists. It was truly an honor to discuss with you and know your industry experience. But we would like to open up the question and answer session. Well, as I've told you, we'll be happy to answer your questions. To post your question, please click on the top right-hand corner. There is a hand signal, and you will be unmuted by our coordinator, and you can ask your question. Shall we take the first question, Pradeep? Well, it's already mentioned in the chat. We hear Mr. Vaibhav Chavan has asked a question. One of the major risks is lower productivity during initial stages of the project, and project teams are generally working unconsciously. We generally end up with pile up for the work for later stages. Well, it's all about the Vaibhav. I would try to sum it as that: have we done an extensive work on the allocation of the responsibilities at the initial stage, and have we done an extensive work on understanding what is expected at the end of each week or each milestone or each task? And when we create this, what we call it as activity list, we also need to make sure that by what time it will be created. It is all about the estimation here. If you would have done a bottom-up estimation, then you need not face this particular issue of having a lot of lags in your project management. I hope I was able to answer your question, Vaibhav. Well, let's move on to the next question. Harshal Desai had asked a question. Halfway through my project, my schedule performance index and cost performance index are at 1. Does this guarantee my project would be successful? Well, Harshal, it is more of like having, I would say, a sigma level of 3. That means that you're just meeting your targets today. Now, the most important thing what we are missing out here is the risk. Because at the end of the day, if the risk happens, it is going to impact either your cost or schedule or quality. So it is very bound to happen that your schedule performance index and cost performance index will vary. So to be on a safer side, it is also good to have a little bit of buffer in your schedule performance, SPI and CPI, as we call it as. Well, Harshal, I hope I was able to answer your question. Well, Vishwa had asked the question, how do we prioritize these risks? What is the risk probability, high, low, medium? Well, Vishwa, to answer your question, this entirely depends on your industry and organization risk matrix. It is totally dependent on what kind of an industry you're working. What is the severity of an event which happens? What is the probability or the occurrence rate? And also, do you have any detection mechanism in place for an event to happen? For instance, if I'm about to have a low on my petrol gauge, do I have a detection mechanism that, yes, there is some mechanism which will inform me that I am running out of gas? So that all these together defines your risk priority matrix. Do we have any other questions? If yes, please raise your hand on your top right-hand corner, and we'd be more than happy to answer your questions. Okay. Somnath Pai wants to ask a question. Somnath, go ahead. You're on. Somnath? Well, Somnath, we are not able to hear you. Okay, let's move on to the next question and we'll come back to Somnath. Okay, Nilesh had asked a question, what does he mean by RACI? It's a responsibility assignment matrix, Nilesh. It's called as responsibility, accountability, consulted, and informed. But Somnath has written a question over here. I believe improper vendor management to create satisfaction of the stakeholders as that's what he's saying. As services get delayed. I totally agree with you, Somnath. It is very imperative for us to make sure that we have our service level agreements tied up with the vendors as well. They also play a very critical role to make success for the projects. Okay, so do we have any questions? Any more questions? Okay. Well, I would also like to thank the expert panelists and industry leaders who have shared this knowledge with us and to present this. And also I would like to extend my thanks to the team of SSA, including our Managing Director, Mr. Ganesh Iyer, who gave his own insights, Mr. Pradeep Bhaskaran, who was able to manage this show very well without any interruptions, my IT team, Sudhir Pujari, and the rest of the team who supported me at the back end. Thanks to Google.com for providing information and pictures for my study and presentation. Thank you very much for PricewaterhouseCoopers for sharing their survey results with us to showcase it to the rest of the team. And many thanks to Project Management Institute for providing enormous insight into trends of project manager. Feel free to reach out to us for any kind of a solution for your project management practices at srinivask@ssa-solutions.com, or you can even respond to the email which is been sent across to you for the webinar registration. It was truly an honor to talk to you guys and understand your practices. Can we thank the expert panelists? Well, Dr. Nimkar, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your making time amidst your busy schedule. It was truly an honor to talk to you. Yogesh?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yogesh, for your time. It was truly an honor to talk to you as well. And Girish?
Thanks.
Girish, thank you very much for your time. Okay,
Thanks a lot for inviting us.
You're most welcome, sir. It's truly an honor. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.